This was all over ice. What's going on, y'all? Attorney Tom here. In today's video, I'm going to be reacting to WorkSafe BC's video titled Fernie Memorial Arena Incident Animation. As always, make sure you stick around to the end where I assign my percentages of fault. Let's jump into it.
The Fernie Memorial Arena, a civic recreational facility in Fernie, BC, is comprised of a curling rink and a hockey rink, separated by a common area that includes a large compressor room. The refrigeration system for both rinks is located in the compressor room. A critical component of the refrigeration system is the brine chiller. The chiller helps create ice for the hockey and curling surfaces.
Fun fact before we get into the serious stuff, I myself have in fact curled. Many of y'all might not think that's a big deal, but I'm from Texas. Just thought I'd point that out.
A brine chiller is a large cylinder filled with ammonia. Inside the cylinder are many smaller tubes through which warm brine passes. The ammonia in the cylinder evaporates as it boils, cooling the brine as it circulates through the tubes. It is critical that the brine and ammonia never mix. Due to corrosion over time, a pinhole developed in one of the curling rink's chiller tubes, allowing ammonia to leak and mix with the brine. This leak was not repaired during the 2017 summer seasonal shutdown.
Okay, so this leak was not repaired during the off-season, which brings us to our first set of questions. Who is in charge of repairing these pipes? Who is in charge of identifying that these pipes need to be repaired in the first place? Was it a failure of identifying that the pipe needed to be repaired? Or was the pipe identified as needing to be repaired, but the repair person, whether that be an independent third-party contractor or somebody who runs the facility, failed to repair the pipe? Additionally, and this is a problem we have run into many times on this channel before, it seems that the Fernie Memorial Arena is government run. And while I'm not a Canadian lawyer, if it's anything like the United States, suing the government sucks. When you are suing the government for a tort, you have to jump through extra hoops, and there's usually some form of qualified immunity. Whether that be a cap limit on how much you can recover for a tort, or further restrictive notices that you have to comply with in order to properly put the government on notice of the lawsuit, or a plethora of other things. But I'm getting too far ahead of myself. Let's see if it tells us who was responsible for failing to fix this pipe.
On October 16, 2017, at approximately 6 a.m., the chiller for the curling rink was started and put back into service. On October 17, 2017, at 3:52 a.m., the automatic ammonia gas detector alarm system was triggered. The alarm system sent an alert to the fire department and the security monitoring company that there was an ammonia leak at the arena. Soon after, 2 City of Fernie workers arrived at the arena with the fire department. 2 firefighters and 1 of the city workers put on self-contained breathing apparatus and entered the compressor room. Inside the room, they observed the refrigeration equipment running and the ammonia alarm sounding. The brine expansion tanks were shaking and brine was sloshing out. The firefighters, using handheld detectors, registered ammonia readings of 300 parts per million, which is the level that is immediately dangerous to life and health. One of the city workers closed some of the brine system and ammonia system valves. The shaking stopped. The firefighters vented the building, and the ammonia levels were monitored at 50 parts per million. A city worker then isolated the leaking chiller and shut the system down. The firefighters were told they were no longer needed and left the location between 4:30 and 5 a.m.
So the firefighters came and they correctly identified the problem. They got measures of 300 ppm. They ventilated the building. They reduced it down to 50 ppm. And also the city employee identified where the leak was coming from and shut it down. All those things are very good. It obviously shows that they had knowledge of the problem because they had a solution to fix it, which is what really scares me because they would not be making a WorkSafe BC video if the video ended here. And of course, we have 3 more minutes left in the video, which tells me that if an incident occurred after them having this knowledge, it probably means that there was a lack of communication at the very least.
At approximately that time, it was decided that the compressors should be restarted in an effort to save the hockey rink's ice.
And there it is. So I anticipate something bad is going to happen when they turn the compressor back on despite not doing anything to fix it, simply to save the ice.
However, because the compressor's oil had been contaminated with brine, the compressors could not be restarted until the oil had been changed. An external contractor dispatched a refrigeration mechanic to the site to change the compressor oil. Prior to the arrival of the refrigeration mechanic, arrangements were made to put the ammonia alarm in silent mode for the repairs.
Okay. Why was the alarm put into silent mode? And if it was put into silent mode, was the independent third-party repairman notified of the pre-existing condition? Did he have the proper safety equipment to properly make an oil change with a potential ammonia threat? Failing to communicate those things with the repairman absolutely could create some form of liability.
Shortly after 9 a.m., the refrigeration mechanic and the 2 city workers entered the compressor room to change the oil in one of the compressors. They were not wearing appropriate personal protective equipment and did not have personal monitors for ammonia exposure. There was no backup team, and emergency responders were not present. From the time the refrigeration system was put back into service the day before, and while the refrigeration system was shut down, the ammonia leak in the curling rink's chiller continued. As the ammonia in the brine increased, so did the pressure in the system. At approximately 9:30 a.m., a second mechanical failure occurred. The rising pressure within the brine system eventually exceeded the holding strength of a coupling, causing it to separate and spray the workers with a mixture of brine and ammonia. A high concentration of ammonia was rapidly released into the room. The ammonia levels were not survivable. All 3 workers succumbed to the exposure.
Holy sh**. This was all over ice. First of all, when they had the ammonia leak in the morning at like 3 a.m., the very next thing they should have done is, hey y'all, how are we going to fix this ammonia leak so next time we turn this thing on, this doesn't happen again? But that was not part of the conversation. Who they brought on the very next morning was somebody just to turn the system back on so they wouldn't lose the ice rather than fix the underlying problem. And then on top of all of that, 2 city workers were involved as well. Shouldn't their colleague who was there overnight have told them, hey, we had an ammonia problem just a couple hours ago. We put the alarm on silent. You probably shouldn't go in there. Now, obviously, if a lawyer were working on this case, they would collect more information as well, such as what were the type of pressures the employees were on to make sure the ice didn't melt. For instance, did the city come down hard on them? They said, you know what? You better have this ice rink in tip-top shape because if you don't, you're fired. Putting unnatural pressure or unnatural weight on something that should not be prioritized before human life. Okay, so that's it for the video. There were really only 4 major parties involved. The first major party is the party that was responsible for identifying and fixing the ammonia leak during the off season. That never happened. The second party are the firefighters who came when the ammonia leak was present. They came properly geared up, they identified the problem, and they shut it down. I don't think they did anything wrong. The third party is the city employees who were there with the firefighters, and then just a few short hours later made the decision to restart up the ice rink because they wanted to save the ice. When they did that, they put the alarm on silent and they called a repair person who did not have proper PPE, nor did the fellow city hall members or city council members, not city council members, city workers have PPE either, which makes me think that they didn't have a line of communication with their colleague who was presumably on the night shift. And the fourth party involved was the third party independent oil repairman who was coming to restart the compressors. And I don't think he did anything wrong either. He was trying to restart a dangerous system, a system in which already had an unnatural and dangerous amount of pressure due to an ammonia leak that was no fault of his own. So with that, I think 100% of the blame needs to be put on the parties who were in charge of identifying and fixing the ammonia leaking pipe and the city workers. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say those were probably the same people. After all, this was a facility managed by the city of Fernie. So, in my opinion, based on this very limited amount of data that we have, 100% at fault on the city of Fernie and their employees. But I want to know what y'all think in the comments below. All right, y'all, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Talk to you later. Bye.
He's a catastrophic injury attorney who accidentally became a YouTuber. Attorney Tom.